Welcome to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, where brotherhood, faith, and resilience collide. Here, real men share raw testimonies of battles seen and unseen, stories of struggle, redemption, and the strength found only in Christ. This is more than a podcast. I'm going to sit down with Brother Derrick tonight. And Lord, I just ask you to be in this conversation. Derrick has got tremendous courage to come on tonight and to share his testimony and to share the testimony of his son, Christian. And I just pray that this will reach those out there that are struggling with grief, that are dealing with the unimaginable, Lord. And there's so many people that are lost right now. So many people that need direction and purpose in life. And I just pray we will reach those folks tonight, especially those in the military and first responder world. Thank you for this opportunity again to sit down with Derrick. Thank you for this platform. Pray you fill me with your Holy Spirit, guide this conversation. Lead me, Lord. Bless Derrick and his family. And thank you again for tonight. It's in your mighty name I pray. Amen. Welcome back to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Steve. Tonight is going to be an episode that is heavy. And I'm going to go ahead and warn you guys right now. It is a very important episode, but it's an unimaginable feeling for a parent to have to lose a child and then bury that child. And tonight we're going to honor the life of Christian, my guest's son, who was lost in 2025. Derrick's here tonight to share his testimony. Derrick served his country in the United States Army. He's also serving as a police officer. So he's been there. He's served his country. He served his community. He knows what it's like to wear a uniform and to protect and serve. But now he is a father that does not have his son. And we're here tonight to honor his son's legacy and to help anyone out there that may be struggling with grief, that may be looking for direction, purpose, and most importantly, looking to learn about Jesus. Because at the end of the day, we're both here tonight because of God and because of our faith in Christ. Derrick, thank you for joining the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. I'm honored tonight, man, to sit down with you and share your story.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, let's give Gabe Smith a big shout out. Gabe from Precision Resilience brought us together. Gabe, love you, bro. Thank you for making this connection.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. So Derrick, I start every episode the same way, man. Kind of start us from the beginning. Where did you grow up, man? Like, where are you from?
So I grew up in a city called Schertz. So it's just outside of San Antonio. So anyone familiar, the 35 North and corridor between Austin and San Antonio, some of the more popular towns would be New Braunfels or San Marcos, but just south of that. So Schertz, Cibolo, Selma, this whole little area is where I grew up. You know, it was a town of 10,000 when I grew up here, and now there's probably 150,000 in this area now. So it's just shot up like wildfire.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, growing up was, we talked off air a little bit. So did you always kind of have your eye on law enforcement as a kid? Because, you said your dad was a police officer, right?
Yeah. So my dad started in the 90s. He actually kind of made the transition late in life. I think he was in his early mid 30s when he left his job to be a police officer. And when I got out of the military, I was in my early 30s. So by the time I became an officer, I was probably around the same age. I was about 35 years old.
Okay.
But yeah, so grew up around police officers. Always knew I had a passion for the job. But when I was growing up, sports was my thing. So I was really passionate about baseball.
Nice. Good sport.
Yeah, it was a great sport. I had the ability to like really play the game well. My goal was to always, go to college, play ball, and then get drafted and go pro. I had that. I had the skill set for it, and I did go play some college baseball, but then I got in trouble, and unfortunately, that kind of took me away from school and sports. And off a crazy whim, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna join the Army. This is 2005. Iraq was big, and it's crazy because I'm not from a military background.
Okay.
But in high school, in the early days of the war, it was on the news like 24/7.
Yeah, it was.
So we were seeing it all the time. And during high school, I never had a thought I would ever join the military. That wasn't even a desire. There was no way. But just, it's crazy how life just says, you know what? You're not in control. And did my first contract for 3 years, 11 Bravo, and went up to Fort Drum.
Okay.
10th Mountain.
So do you think you were trying to prove something by doing that since baseball was kind of done? You feel like you had this desire to prove to the world that you were more than just a normal dude?
No, I'll be honest, I was just being dumb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as a young, dumb kid, I had an attitude and I got into some trouble and had to leave my college that I had a scholarship for. And I was trying to like restart myself and there were some hurdles that I would have to go through like before that. And I just didn't want to do that. I felt like I shouldn't have to do that. I was too good for that. And just being dumb. I didn't meet my first wife. I knew her, but we got together. And so she was a real good friend of mine all through high school. We were always best friends, but just never really dated. And I always like told myself that if I ever get to be with her, I'm gonna marry that woman. Sure enough, like somewhere along the line of me leaving college and moving back home and the military, we got together and I was like, well, I want to take care of her. And I was like, well, the only way I could do it right now is join the military. 3 years
Okay.
and it's funny because life at that time, because one, I was young. I think I thought I knew everything.
Hmm.
I wouldn't listen to anybody, and I wanted to do it my way. And so when I graduated from basic and went up to Fort Drum and got to my unit, life started to kind of slow down. And then I realized I was like, dang, what am I doing? Like I could still be playing baseball. My
Yeah.
entire life was devoted to baseball and to make the pros. And I left everything behind to join the military. And it just all hit me at one time. Like it all just life just hit me, but I was stuck. I already signed up. I already graduated. I was at Fort Drum. And I would say the first 6, 7 months of my military career was kind of rough. I was very depressed, didn't want to do it, you know, didn't know why I even joined. And so I had to kind of get over that obstacle and that mindset to to kind of start succeeding in my military career.
So were you 10th Mountain guy then?
I was so
Okay.
214, 10th Mountain. They have a good reputation. They're one of the most deployed like brigades.
Hmm.
GWAT, Solder City. We were in the Triangle of Death in 2006. We were in Yusufia. So yeah, they have a long history. And they're also like Mogadishu.
Yep.
They were there as well. So some of the senior NCOs that were at Fort Drum were privates during like Black Hawk Down.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, First Sergeant Eversman was
Yep.
actually first sergeants at 431 Polar Bears. So it was that was probably the best unit I had ever been a part of. Really good tradition, great training, great leaders. Um, yeah, I loved Fort Drum.
So you said you got into law enforcement in your 30s. I mean, what was a turning point in the Army where you decided you wanted to stay in for longer than the first enlistment?
So my first enlistment when I deployed at that time, you could re-enlist at 24 months. So
Oh, I
my
remember that. I remember that.
yeah, so my initial contract was only 3 years. So when I deployed to Iraq in 2006, I was pretty much already within that 24-month window,
Hmm.
and just having some issues with my first wife. She had moved back home to San Antonio, and I knew that if I wanted to make it work, I would have to get close to her. I think she was more homesick. I took her 18-year-old and just moved her across the country to upstate New York,
Yeah.
for Texas.
It's a lot.
And so, yeah, so I had the opportunity to re-enlist for 6 years, good bonus, tax free, and in Iraq. And so just I went ahead and did it. And so that was kind of the start of when I knew that the Army might be a career for me.
Okay. I ask every veteran this, Derek. I'm going to ask you this, man. So I didn't cover it yet, but like growing up, was church a part of your family's tradition?
Yeah, so not so much with my dad, but with my mom it was.
Okay.
So the church that actually Christians buried at right now was the church I grew up in. Um,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, it's a Catholic church. So I grew up. I'm Catholic. I did all my steps for that, communion and stuff like that. And so my mom, it wasn't something that was, really pushed,
Hmm.
but it was consistent. Sunday mornings, I went to church with my mom, And so, it wasn't. I grew up with faith, but I wasn't always into it like I
Yeah.
should have been. It was more just, hey, my mom said I had to go, so that's why I
That's a
went.
lot of us, dude. It's
Yeah.
just well, and the reason where I was going with this question, I asked pretty much every guy that comes on. It was in the military. I mean, I understand, why you joined the army and you kind of get there and now you're like, man, this sucks. I should be playing ball. But was God ever kind of on your mind or at the forefront once you got in? Like, man, God, what I need some help. Like, what am I doing here? Or was that kind of still on the just on the back burner because church was just more of a thing you had to do when you were younger?
Not that I remember. I mean, I think a lot of us that kind of grew up in church, but not really, I guess, fully into our faith. When we go through hard times, we kind of lean back to
Hmm.
our faith,
Yeah.
um, which is kind of bad to say. Like I only turn to God whenever I need Him, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's kind of where I was at. Thinking back, some of the hardest times is probably is when I would ask God, hey, please help me or give me advice. But to say
Yeah.
that he was a driving factor in my life or in my decisions. No, he
Okay.
wasn't.
Yeah, and I asked that question, man, because I'm ashamed to say that I didn't put him in any of my decisions until I got sober. And I just like to ask vets, kind of what their take is on it, because every once in a while, a guy will say, "Yeah, I prayed about it, and I want to go to this pipeline, and I prayed about it, and God led me there." I'm like, "Dang, man, that's awesome! Like, I wish I'd have thought like that, but I didn't think that way."
Yeah. I wonder if more of us were just true to ourselves and really thought about it. If that's really
Yeah,
what we did.
probably.
If
Yeah,
it worked
especially
out, if it worked out for you, then yeah. But what happens if it didn't work out?
right, exactly. Well, yeah, I can talk about that one for a while, but but
Yeah.
all right. So were you able to kind of restore that marriage then? Like since you decided that your wife at that time moved to Texas, you're in New York, so were you able to make that work?
Yeah. No. So I mean, I got back. I moved down to Fort Sam, where she was at here in San Antonio,
Okay.
and we got back together for a couple more years, but ultimately it didn't last. So we got divorced. Um, and that's and later on I met my son's mom, um, and so that's kind of where the story starts with Christian.
Okay.
Uh, Met her. I was already a staff sergeant. She was younger. I was at Fort Knox with First ID.
Wow.
They just set up a brigade there, a BCT. They were at Fort Hood, and then they moved up there. So they were doing a deployment to Afghanistan in 2011. So me and Brittany got together and got married in 2010. And when I deployed, she was pregnant with Christian. Yeah, so we spent in 2011 in May, Christian was born, and I was able to watch it on Skype on deployment in the middle of nowhere like Afghanistan.
That had to be hard, man, to not be home for that. Like, can you explain, like, to our viewers and listeners, maybe that have never been in the military or can't really fathom what that's like? What was your thought process at that time? I mean, obviously you're overseas, you're in country, you're in work mode, but like to watch your son being born on Skype, like I can still remember my it's weird, dude. My son's birthday's tomorrow. He's gonna be 8, and so like when we was planning for this episode, I was kind of thinking about him, but I remember being in the hospital and watching it, and like that's just wild, dude, to be like deployed and then having to watch it on Skype.
It's crazy because some of us that joined in those early years, like your first deployments were a lot different. You didn't have internet, you didn't
Yeah.
have phones and stuff. I remember in Iraq, I think the company commander would let us use his sat phone
Hmm.
like once a month. Like we're out in a small cop, and once a month he would start kind of rotating the platoons in to make a 2 or 3 minute call on his sat phone so we could actually call home. And then, fast forward years later, you have internet, you have phones, you can call home. So technology had to really, come a long way based on when you were deploying. So
Mm-hmm.
it was, this was at the very beginning of Skype. Um, I'd had some buddies that had tried to deploy to go on their R&R and try to make the birth of the children,
Okay.
and they weren't going to allow you to extend your 2 weeks. So I had some friends that like were there the day before they had to leave. That's when their child was born.
Wow.
So they got 24 hours, and then boom, they had to be back
Yeah.
on a plane to get back. And so I felt like I didn't want to do that. I wanted the full 2 weeks with Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And where we were at, you know, we were getting hammered a lot. So the morale was down because of some of our leadership's decisions, but we were getting hit a lot. So that first 6 months was kind of a lot more stress because, Brittany was pregnant. I wanted to meet my son. I'd always wanted a son. That's it. Never had plans for a daughter. I wanted one son, and I knew that since high school. Like I knew his name was Christian Allen in high school. I don't know,
Wow.
but I knew
Huh.
that was going to be my son's name. And all I wanted to do was meet him. So I made a decision that I'm going to stay and watch him be born on Skype. And the company commander and my leadership was good. They were on patrol that night, and they let me stay back, and I had the whole computer hut like to myself. And I don't remember exactly how long the labor was, but it did take some hours. And I remember about 2 a.m. the computers did an automatic reset, and so the platoon had come in from their patrol, and I was talking to my platoon sergeant while the computers were rebooting, and we had just kind of got lost in conversation, and it wanted to be like an hour talk. And I was like, oh dang, I got to go back in there. So as soon as I signed back on and got back on Skype, like Brittany was like starting to push.
Wow.
So I was like, oh man, I almost missed it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
wild,
but
man.
it was amazing. I mean, I had no reference point. I'd never been a dad before. I'd never been in that hospital room before, so I didn't know what I was missing. Like you don't know what you don't know. But
You're right, right.
I mean, it was really weird. You have a son, but you're not really there to hold him, so it's not really real yet, like for you. And so, but as soon as he was born, the next day I was on a helicopter to take me back to the small base to Salerno, and then start the journey home.
Okay, cool. So what was that like when you do get home and you finally get to hold him for the first time, man? What was that moment like for you?
I don't remember exactly what that moment was like. I mean, it was just amazing. Again, I
Yeah.
was young,
Yeah.
and just man, like it's crazy. You go from being in war, you know, complex attacks, and just a whole different mindset to now you're holding this little child in your hands and that you're responsible for, and you don't know how to be a father. Like
Mhm.
and like I'm still young myself. I think I was 25, like 26 years old, and it's just, I mean, it's just so much to take in at one time. And
Yeah.
then knowing, hey, I only have 2 weeks, and I got to go back for another 6 months,
Yeah.
so I'm about to miss another 6 months of his life. So yeah, it was great, sad, surreal. It's probably still a little bit of a shock. You
Mhm.
know, it wasn't until I got home off deployment to where you could really kind of like settle in and kind of cherish, Christian and being a father, and just starting that whole new life. That you were on that time constraint that I had 2 weeks.
Yeah. No, that's it's definitely going from, like, one extreme to the other and then having to leave again. I can't imagine, just and I know it's very common in the military,
Oh
but,
yeah.
yeah, that would be really tough, man. What about I'm gonna ask you this again, man. So, like, you have your son, you leave, you come back. Does your mindset or outlook on your faith or anything like that change at all?
Not really. So Christian's mom, her parents are really big in the church. Like they
Okay.
have a strong faith, and they kind of lead into, my journey of faith even till today. And so Brittany's mom grew up in the church. Her faith was really strong. Her whole family's faith was strong, but mine wasn't quite there.
Mhm.
So again, I was still, I wouldn't even say halfway in, halfway out. I was kind of like a quarter in, three-fourths out.
Yeah.
I went to church when we were, down like visiting her parents. But other than that, no, it wasn't a big factor yet in my life. I believed in God.
Mhm.
I believed in a higher power. It just wasn't a big, church was not a big thing like for me.
Yeah. And I asked that question because it wasn't for me either. Like, I don't know why, but I didn't really, talk to God at that point in my life. Both my kids, I've got 2 kids, and, it's weird, man. I was just kinda going through and my story is nowhere near like yours. I wasn't deployed or anything, but, I don't know, I just was kinda going through the motions, like, "This is what I'm supposed to do. It's my kid, and I'm here," but I didn't really, like, I don't know, and it's weird saying it now because I haven't said it on an episode yet, but I didn't really, like, pray and say, "Thank you, God, and thank you for blessing me with this beautiful boy or my daughter." I just kinda I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of like, it's supposed to happen. I'm just gonna roll with it. Like it's kind of different.
I think sometimes we're what our hearts say are different than what we physically say.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's
I
true.
think
That's a
in
good
my
point.
heart, I really felt the faith in God, and in my heart, I really wanted it, but just physically in in like my words and my actions, I wasn't ready to sacrifice
Right.
some of those things like for it. So it's always been like a battle inside. Do I give
Yeah.
myself to faith 100%? Or am I too selfish and I don't want to do it? But in my heart, I know I want to.
Hmm.
It's just physically doing it, and I think most of us struggle with that, especially early on until we really just give ourselves up like to the Lord.
Hmm. Do you still feel like that today?
Yeah, my faith today is a lot stronger than it's ever been. But to say that I'm all in, would that would be a lie. Like it probably halfway in, halfway out, like most of us. And like what I was telling you when I heard Kevin, your last guest, like I'm speaking, God can have a lot of me, he just can't have all of me. There's
Hmm.
some parts that I still want. And I mean, and like it's not that I don't want to give my whole self to the Lord. It's just really hard. There's still, for me personally, there's still some anger
Hmm.
um from losing Christian. Um, there's still some questions, So I'm just not there yet to to really truly in my heart, if I'm being honest with myself, saying that, hey, I've given 100% of myself to the Lord, even though in my heart I want to.
Yeah.
I want my heart and I want my actions to be the same. And so that's the struggle for me, at least, like right now.
Are you comfortable unpacking that a little bit right
Yeah.
now? Okay. I hear what you're saying, and I've been in a position in my life where I believed in God, but I didn't, and I was already baptized. I got baptized as a teenager, but I didn't want to surrender to Him because I thought that meant I'd have to stop drinking. I thought that meant I'd have to live a certain way. And I'm just going to speak from my experience, and I'm not comparing stories or anything, but I had so much pride, um, that I didn't want to go to God and just basically say, I want to live for you. I want to be a good husband. At the time when I was still married, I want to be a good dad. I saw it more as, if I really go head first into faith, however you want to word it, Christianity, church, I can't live the lifestyle I want to. I want to have fun. That's how I saw it, which was not the right way to look at it. So my question for you, Derrick, is like, at this stage in your life, and we haven't even gotten into really, the big part of our story tonight, but as a friend, I'm just curious, like, what is really holding you back? Like, you have every right to experience anger and have questions, and just what you've been through alone. I can't even imagine what that would be like. But I'm looking at it through the lens of like how can I help you? Like, what can I do to maybe encourage you, or to um lead you in a way, and not in a superiority way, but just as a brother. I'm just curious, man. I'd just like to hear kind of more on it.
I mean, there's so much. Like, it's not, my faith in God, I think, is getting stronger. I still have my questions about church
Hmm.
and churches and pastors.
Yeah.
I've been, when we first kind of really got me and my wife, when we first started kind of going back to church and saying and finding what church we wanted to go to, we had tried some different churches. And I think I always overthink things. And so, sometimes I go to a church and I just I feel the vibe and I see how the pastor talks and it doesn't feel genuine to me. Not saying it's not, it just doesn't feel like, it just doesn't feel right to me
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a difference between my faith, my personal faith, because I do seek knowledge out myself.
Hmm.
I study verses, I'll Google things and I'll read things and I'll seek that knowledge out myself where I may question the actual church itself.
Yeah.
And so, to say, I think I'm more so into God personally than I am about going to church and being a part of a congregation and giving myself 100% to the church.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm still battling that as well. Um, and then also why would God let a 14-year-old die?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, there's that.
Yeah.
You know, I have not been perfect my entire life. I've done some bad things. I've done some hurtful things. Like why couldn't you just take me?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
uh, so there's that.
I understand that 100%, man. That right there alone, and that's above my pay grade to give an answer that would, kind of maybe provide some clarity. I have my own thought on it, but I don't have the knowledge base to really articulate a good answer, because that's tough, man. Like that is I can't even imagine what that's like, you know.
But like when I pray, I thank him for his grace. I thank him for giving me Christian for 14 years.
Mhm.
So I'm very appreciative of what God has given me in my life. Uh, Even though He's taken a lot away,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of where, to me, that's, and not to say I'm better than anybody, but it's like, how do you react to your faith whenever bad things happen?
Mhm.
And I'm in a grief group that I attend on Tuesday nights, and this group is just for parents who lost children. And I sit there and listen to stories about some parents have just completely gone away from their faith in church. Like they can't forgive God for taking their child, and to me that's like sad.
Yeah.
I feel for them because we talked about this before. I don't understand how people can get through some of the hardest times in their lives without their faith. I just don't get it. Without God, without the faith I did have and the faith that was growing those 5 days when Christian was in the hospital. I just don't know how I would have got through those times. And so when I hear people like that who have lost their faith because of something horrible, it's understandable. I understand it, but man, I kind of, this is when faith really presents itself. You know,
Mhm.
can you give the glory to God even at the worst times? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of, and like I feel like I can, like that's why I thank Him for 14 years, and I don't scold Him for just giving me 14 years.
Mhm.
I was blessed with 14 years to have Christian.
You have way more wisdom when it comes to Christianity than you give yourself credit for, man, because everything you just said, that's how God, I think, wants us to view things. And that's not necessarily how it may operate inside of a church building. And I'm not knocking church by any means, but I think as men of faith, it's our duty to use discernment, to learn, to talk to God, as like you and me are talking right now. And just hearing you talk and your outlook, man, I've known people in my life that have been never missed a service, have been, church members their whole life, and then something falls apart, they turn their back. They're like, "Oh, I'm out because I did everything you wanted, and now you're not coming through for me, so I'm gone." But hearing you talk, man, you get it, dude. I mean, I think that's really what faith is about, and I think there's a difference in. I don't have the scripture in front of me, but if you look at Jesus and the life of Jesus, the church persecuted him. The Pharisees hated him. They killed him. But I think as men, our job is to make disciples and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And everything you're just saying, that aligns with that, man. Like we're not sitting here going, well, if God doesn't give me this that I want, then I'm not going to worship him. That's not how it goes. That's just not how it works. But some people see church and faith as one thing. So like if I go to church every Sunday and I tithe, or I volunteer at the homeless shelter, then God's going to bless me with a Lambo, or he's going to give me this big house. And that's just not how it works. I think life is harder as a Christian than a
100%.
non-believer because you're going to face trials. And what you said earlier, I don't know how people get through through hard times without their faith. I think that's what it's all about, man, is that we'll lean into God and say, hey, I can't do this on my own. I need your help, because that's how you humble yourself. That's how you surrender. So, Derrick, I just want to say, man, like, give yourself some grace, dude, because you have a really good outlook, and there's no like code or level we have to hit as men to be worthy of any of this, like you're doing, I mean, especially after what you've experienced in 9 months, man, you were very, very knowledgeable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not perfect.
None of us are. None
I
of us are.
sin. I say ugly things. I fight with my wife. I do things that aren't the best, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. Trying to, and I could easily just turn away from God. Like I tell my friends, outwardly I may look like I'm okay, but I'm just one bad day from just going the opposite way. Every day is a struggle. And I think that's where kind of faith comes in.
Hmm.
Just I'm not. You would look at me, and I'm not the guy that you'd be like, "Oh man, he's this very faithful guy." But it's because I'm not. I don't do it publicly. Like I do it on my own terms. I do it when I'm alone, uh, by myself, because like I'm not. Because I truly feel like I'm kind of like a poser right now. Like, okay, well, you believe in God, but you do these sinful things, and it's like, yeah, you're right, but I'm really trying to be better.
Hmm.
So right now, I'm kind of in that uncomfortable phase of in my heart, I want to be better. So I just don't want to feel like I'm not what I see people at church, or like I see people that I believe that are like really faithful, how they are. And I'm just nothing like that yet. And so because of that, I kind of keep it in. I kind of keep it private to myself. But every day, I pray for strength to get out of bed and continue this next day. Because there are times where that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I just stay in bed all day
Yeah.
and just want to just shut down and just give up.
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying. And I think, you know, for the listeners and the viewers right now, we have an enemy, and the enemy is going to do what he can to keep you away from God. And so that's why you have to just, even when you don't feel it, even when you don't feel like you can make it through the day or get out of bed, and you're doing the right thing, man. Just try to put God in everything you do. And he understands us. I mean, he's our father. He's not up there to throw lightning bolts at us or like say, oh, you screwed up, get away from me. And I think sometimes people have this misconception that if you make him mad, he'll never talk to you again, and that's not the case. And so nobody's going to be able to just live this life where they don't make a mistake, or they're the I'm going to hit back on this real quick before I forget, like talking about the church and stuff. I think some of the churchy people that you see, they're probably the biggest sinners. You just never know it, man, because they're hiding it. You just would never know it because they're not going to talk about it. So um I totally understand what you're saying. I've had some of the same struggles with church and, listening to preachers and stuff like that. But it's one day at a time, like they say in AA, man. Just like one day at a time, and you got to look through it of a lens of, um, what can you do now with your time to help others, other parents that have experienced what you've experienced, others that may be going through. I mean, you've got your military, your law enforcement careers. Mental health obviously is a huge thing now in both of those career paths. You're showing tonight that it takes strength to ask for help. You're in a grief group versus just staying quiet and trying to figure it all out on your own, which is what a lot of us tend to do that have come up in those career paths.
Yeah. I'll say one thing about that grief group. So it's called Forever Loved. You know, again, it's for parents who lost children. I am not the go to counseling, get there type person. And, you know, but I will say that, you know, this group I can relate to so much. And I think it's because I found a group that's, for one, is just for parents who lost children. So we're all in the same boat. Because I've done other groups where it's just for loss, and they've lost parents, they've lost siblings and stuff like that. And it's just not the same.
No, it's different.
So, anybody that and believe me, I've given up on counseling. I've given up on therapy. It was a waste of time. I don't want to do it. And a part of me still thinks that on certain type of therapy. But when you find the right group, when you find the right resource, man, it helps so much.
Hmm.
So if you've given up on it, it's probably because you just haven't found the right one. But
Yeah.
I bet it's out there. I,
Yeah.
I didn't go seeking this. It came to me. This group was brought up to me, and you should go try this. And I tried it, and that was the best decision I could have ever made. Because I don't know how I would have gotten through the past 9 months without my faith and without this group. To truly understand loss of a child and how to deal with it. And these aren't professional therapists; these are other parents who are
Hmm.
just going through the same thing, and we're able to discuss it, talk about it, and that's how we learn. We're learning to deal with it together. So there's resources and groups and places out there for you. You just have to find it. Promise you, it. 'Cause I am not the person to seek it, but I'm so happy that it found me, and it's changed my life for the best.
Yeah, there's strength in numbers, and we're not designed to do this life on our own and just carry all our own burdens. So I'm glad, man, that you have that group. And yeah, I think people need to hear that, that you if you don't like a therapist, look for another one or find another outlet. Like I tried AA, it wasn't for me. I found a men's group in church, and that's what kept me going. So, not everything is going to always work for the same people. There's not like a cookie cutter approach. Sometimes you have to kind of do what's going to work best for you. And I do believe in, having people in your life that you can lean on, that you can talk to, that you can share things with. That way, that's how you heal. You can't just keep it all inside.
Yeah, and I've had some really good friends who are also cops that pushed me to go to church too.
Hmm.
They were also the driving force of me, coming to my faith and really trying to push me that direction. So I mean, if it wasn't for them, they were a huge part of it as well. They may not know it because I don't always express it outwardly like I should, but you hear things, you're listening, you just may not show it well that you are listening and taking it in.
Yeah.
So I've been blessed with some good friends that have led me the right direction. Because I also have friends that will go out and drink with me if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
act a fool. I also have those friends as well, and those friends are great too. But at our age, I'm so happy that I stopped drinking in 2024. Really have those vices like I used to,
Yeah.
because I don't know what that would have done. Like going through this, if I still drank like I used to and stuff like that.
So how did you stay after everything happened? What kept you from going back to drinking?
So I wasn't an alcoholic. Anything bad in my life has probably been when I was drinking.
Hmm.
I was arrested when I was a teenager drinking.
Guilty.
Like, so if I got into a fight, and that's how I lost my scholarship. I was
Oh,
drinking,
okay. Okay.
right? So I got to bad arguments with my wives, my ex-wives. Why? Because I was probably drinking.
Yeah.
Some of our worst fights were drinking, both of us. So it just doesn't really, it just didn't have, there's no upside to it to me personally. And then in
Hmm.
2024, I really got big in competing in jujitsu.
Nice.
Um, I was going through some issues personally myself and in my profession for LE, and I kind of wanted to take a break from that side. And I kind of took a pause in my life and wanted to get closer to my family and kind of choose them first, but I also still needed an outlet. And so in 2024, I decided, all right, I'm going to get away from law enforcement training, and I'm going to be closer to my family and be a better husband and father. But I'm going to, compete in jujitsu and kind of follow that passion. And so I started competing a lot that year. And I'm getting older. I can't get drunk and then be good to go the next day.
Yeah.
If I get drunk on Friday, I'm not good till like Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
It's funny how that works. Yeah.
yeah, so I just can't do it no more. And so I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm training. I'm focusing on that. I want to be hydrated and good to go. And so that kind of catapulted me to stop drinking. And then just out of nowhere, I just didn't have the desire to drink anymore.
Okay.
Like I mean, I don't like I drink sometimes here and there, but
Hmm.
I just don't have a desire. I don't have to go out to a bar and drink. I don't have to go
Yeah.
to a club and drink. I don't have to go to dinner and drink. If I drink, it's because I choose to, and it may just be one. And sometimes I don't even finish that one beer at dinner. You know.
Yeah.
And when Christian passed away, a buddy of mine, he came down and we went to dinner, and he ordered a beer, and I was, you know what, I'll get a beer too. I took one sip and I'm like, just didn't have the taste
Hmm.
for it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so it like wasn't that I truly needed to, but I just didn't see the benefit, at least for me. Like my dad was an alcoholic, my aunt, his sister, an alcoholic, so it does run in the family. And like I said, stuff that we've been through, like a lot of times, the bad stuff is because we were drinking. So I just decided, you know what, that's probably something I don't really need to do. It doesn't benefit me at my age, and I feel better when I'm not drinking and I kind of just like wing it off. So I mean, but that definitely helped because I'm really glad that I didn't have that because like I said, like when you lose a child, I could have destroyed my entire life.
Yeah.
I could have I mean, and it's not because I wanted to. Those first couple weeks, the first month or two, I don't it's a blur. Like you're in shock that you just lost your child and you can really go down some dark paths and deplete and completely destroy your life if you allow it. And thank God in the hospital, those 5 days with Christian, I really came to my faith and that kind of helped me. And I continue that even after. And with my friends and some of my family that have kind of pushed faith and kept me on track, that's kind of where I leaned into more
Hmm.
than those negative vices. And it's true. And it's helped. It's, I can't express how much it's helped having my faith and really getting into that after the loss of Christian and just how it's changed my life. And and it's not just my life externally, but internally how I feel inside. I still have a lot of work on the outside, but I can tell that my heart is changing on the inside. And to me, that's true change. That's not just external, hey, look at me, I go to church every Sunday. No, like my heart is truly changing. And I think that's where that true faith, is coming from.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And man, just hearing you talk, like I really respect the fact that you were able to realize that the alcohol wasn't going to benefit you, especially going through an event like that, because a lot of us, myself included, used alcohol to numb because I didn't want to sit in trauma. I didn't want to deal with anything. So I would just numb, but I didn't appreciate the power that alcohol holds because it has so much power. And it really says a lot about you as a man that you were at that point in your life dealing with losing a child and realizing, first of all, I can't even imagine what that's like, but to say, hey, I don't even need to drink. I need to be surrounded by my family and my friends and loved ones and really lean in my faith. Derek, I wanted to ask you, going through that, did that bring your family together? Like, did you guys become closer through that process?
Say so. I mean, my immediate family, my wife, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, my extended family, not so much. Uh, but we've started to go to church as a family. We sit down and pray with our daughter, and and we're starting to read books about faith, and like we really want her to grow up in the church and with faith. And the only way to do that is to lead by example. And so, I think it's brought us, yeah, definitely closer to our faith as a family. Um, there's still a lot of work to be done. Like Christian's mom and I are divorced. So my current wife, I have a daughter with, she's 5 years old, so my daughter lost her brother.
Yeah.
Uh, my wife lost a stepson, and then I lost a son. And so those are three different levels of grief. And I told my wife, when Christian passed, like, I want to be there for you, but I can't. Like, I need you to find somebody else to lean on because it can't be me. And that probably wasn't the best thing to do. It probably wasn't fair to her, but I just couldn't. I was too broken um, to be that person that everyone leans on, which is normally the case. And I can normally take on that burden, but but this loss, like, it broke me. And so, like, we're still trying to recover from that. She did a great job in taking care of our daughter that first, like, couple months. She took on the role as both parents, and she did all the heavy work, and she allowed me to grieve, and which is something that really helped, and like what I needed, especially that first 2 months. But that also, caused damage.
Yeah.
Like, she had to go through loss on her own, and she had to tough it out more so than I had to. You know, so we're still, we're heading in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of rebuilding to be done, and like a lot of repair. And I think that's just going to be constant because it's never going to get back. Like losing a child, like, you're never going to be the same again. It's never going to be back to what it was. There's nothing that you can do to.
How's your daughter doing, man? To be so young, I mean, that's got to be really difficult.
It was so Christian's mom has a daughter who's 4 years old. She's special needs, so she was less kind of aware of the situation. Mia, my daughter, she's 5. She had just turned 5 when it happened, and she's more aware of what's going on. She knows what death is. So we had lost my wife's cousin, who my daughter was close to, in August to cancer. Lost another family friend to cancer in September. And I remember I was on the phone with my grandma, and we're waiting for the procession to come to the cemetery for the September service. And I was like, "Yeah, man, a lot of people are passing away lately," and not knowing that a month later, I would my like one would be my son. And so we had to explain to Mia what heaven was, and so she knew, but she was really close to a Christian. That was her Bubba, and so we didn't allow her to go to the hospital. We didn't allow her to see him when he in that condition, and we also didn't allow her to see the casket or Christian inside the casket.
Yeah.
And so a part of me feels like she didn't get closure. It wasn't truly real for her at first, because she never saw him. She knew her brother was hurt and in the hospital, but a lot of people knew Christian was hurt, but they didn't understand to the extent Christian was hurt. So when he passed away, it was a shock for a lot of people. So I feel, even though she's 5, she may kind of feel that way. Like, she got closure like that.
Well, and two, I mean, it may be a way to look at it too. She can remember him in a different way than to, had to experience seeing him, um, in a way that she probably couldn't process. Do you mind kind of explaining, if you're comfortable, man, like what happened?
So Christian was at a camp, or he was in a program. So he lived he was having some issues for years, some behavioral issues. And so we had been trying a bunch of things for years to get him on the right track. In 2024, we had a lady had told us about this program up at a ranch for kids who are having troubles. It was a Christian based program. They go to school on the kind of like boarding school, I guess.
Hmm.
Everything was on the ranch.
Hmm.
And so I left the military at close to 13 years when Christian's mom and I divorced because I didn't want to be away from Christian.
Yeah.
And so that was my reason of leaving the military. So I was like, no, no, he's not leaving. I didn't get out for him to go live like somewhere else. I
Hmm.
don't trust people with my kids to begin with. Like, the answer is no. And Christian lived with his mom And so, he got into 8th grade and he was getting older and his behavior was getting worse. Like nothing bad, but just not doing his schoolwork, getting in trouble in school, just being a knucklehead. And we didn't want him to continue to go down the wrong route. So we wanted to do something. And so finally I agreed to explore this idea of this ranch and this program. So we looked at it again. We went and toured the place. It was beautiful out there. Everyone seemed friendly. We took Christian out there as well. He loved it. So his backyard was the Frio River. This is in the hill country of Texas, which is kind of like what Franklin looks like. Um, Very, very hilly, beautiful rivers and lakes and stuff.
Mhm.
Oh, probably not as green as the area where you're at, but kind of like that type of landscape.
Okay.
And so um, we decided to put him in that program. So he went to the program in May of 2025. He started high school there, and his behavior completely changed. He had a rocky start. He spent the summer there. He had a rocky start. The transition was hard, but he had a good. He lived in a house with 6 like other kids, and he had what were called house parents. And these parents were trained, and they actually lived on the ranch and were the house parents for these kids. And there was probably 6 or 7 houses, different age groups, and then the gender based. And so the house parents that he had, he really got close to the dad. And so he was having, a good relationship with them. We were being really close to them. So we were really involved. We were trying to help the house parents because we didn't send our son there to just drop him off. We had a reason for him to go there. So we wanted to be involved in his life. His mom and I have a great relationship. Um, his mom and my wife have a great relationship. We wanted what was best for Christian. We still wanted to be involved in his life. So we were in constant communication and it was working. He started in August of 2025. He started his freshman year and he got into fishing. And like I said, his backyard was the Frio, beautiful. So he fished every day. And somewhere along that August, September timeframe, he just transitioned 180, passing his classes. Behavior was a lot better. He was now playing sports because he couldn't play sports because he wasn't passing his classes ever.
Mm.
But he was really huge in he loved basketball. He was really good. Um, and he loved sports. He just wouldn't pass his classes and he couldn't play sports. Fast forward to August, he was passing his classes, therefore he could play football. And he was doing that. And he was doing so good. And he was fishing every day. And he was sending us pictures of all the big bass and catfish that he was catching. And we would go see him and stuff. And we were just happy because I hated him being there, but it was changing him for the better. It got him away from the environment of public school, which I truly believe is where kids kind of find these negative things. I'm not a huge fan of public school. And it's hard because, like a lot of parents don't have a choice.
Mhm.
And we truly wanted Christian we really wanted to find something to help him, to get him on the right path, to steer him in the right direction for the rest of his life. And if that meant we had to sacrifice a year of his life to send him to this program to do that, then, in the long run, 1 year would have been nothing. It'd been 1 year of his life that, we did that, it helped. And then he had a great life for the next like 50 years, 60 years. And unfortunately, on Halloween night of 2025, he was out on a Polaris, a side by side, a UTV, and we don't know because the house parent that was with him passed away on scene, but they had hit a tree. They struck a tree, and Christian sustained 2 broken legs. He broke his right leg in 2 places. He pretty much broke every bone in his face, and he suffered from several skull fractures. And one of the skull fractures was a really bad one that exposed his brain, and it took him about an hour to get help. And so I can't really go into the details of the accident because of some legal stuff, but
Mhm.
he suffered tremendous head trauma. He was airlifted to the hospital on Halloween night of 2025, and he spent 5 days in the pediatric ICU. And on the 5th day, he passed away from. They couldn't control the swelling to his brain. So what happened is called a herniation, where where the brain swells to the point to where it has nowhere else to go. It has to push out. And when it does, it ruptured and broke the brainstem, which left him basically brain dead with no brain activity. Uh, we had put Christian in an induced coma as a last ditch hope to stop all brain activity and hope that that would help with the swelling. At that time, the doctors had done everything they could to try to prevent the brain from swelling anymore. And and the last ditch effort was to put him in an induced coma. You shut off all brain activity. Therefore, there's no stimulation at all to his brain, and in hopes that that will kind of settle the swelling. And unfortunately, that didn't work. The brain continued to swell. He herniated, but he was on life support due to the coma that we put him in. And so, after he herniated, we knew that he had no brain activity. So then we had to make the decision to take him off life support, and where we knew that he was going to pass away. So we were blessed to be there, um, and hold him as he took his last breath. Um, and so yeah, and so those 5 days in the hospital was where my faith really kind of started. And again, it's sad to say it started when I needed God the most.
Yeah.
But, you know, unfortunately, Christian saved me because he brought me back to God.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it had to be at the sacrifice of his life.
Man, I'm so sorry, bro. I can't even imagine. Um, you're right though. He did bring you he did bring you back to God, in his own way. And phew, I just man, you
Yeah,
are
it was
you are strong, dude. I mean, you were just to be able to share that story. I'll be honest, man. I've been trying to like prep myself for this, and yeah, that's I don't, man. That is just I'm so sorry, man.
I appreciate it. So I'll break down the 5 days of how my faith played out like in this. So like I said, Christian's mom and Christian's grandparents are very big in their faith.
Hmm.
They live in Del Rio, Texas. Um, my ex father-in-law is retired from Air Force. They have a church that they've been going to for 20 plus years. The pastor there, Pastor Terry, he's been involved in Christian's life from the time he was born. He dedicated Christian, and every time like Christian would visit, he would go to that church. He was involved in that church. So when the accident occurred, we called Pastor Terry, and he drove up from Del Rio immediately and was there for 5 days. And so, just kind of being around him, kind of being around, you know, and if you know Pastor Terry, he's very, um, not flamboyant, but like he's very passionate, and he can speak well, and he's very just talkative and stuff, and he explains the Bible and the religion like really well. Like I really like the way he preaches and like and stuff, and like you can just tell like he's one of those guys when he's there, he just felt like finally Pastor Terry's here. Like you have a sense of calmness come over you because we know that he's the closest to God that I know, and and like his faith is unbreakable. And so, just watching him pray over Christian and just listening to his words and his conviction in those words kind of started leaning me towards, Jesus and what it really, and I needed him. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I needed to do anything I could, and praying was one of them. And then Brittany's parents were out of town and they flew in, and then they got there, and they're the same way, very big in their faith. They're the ones that can pray really well. They can speak the word like really well. They're same thing. They have a very large conviction in like how they speak. So you feel a sense of calmness from their belief as well. And so you have Pastor Terry. You have Brittany's parents. I have another friend, Freddie, the same way, very strong in his faith. So when you start seeing those people come in and the way they're praying and the way they're talking and the conviction of like giving yourself to the Lord and like, and they're telling you, hey, pray and put all your faith in the Lord. And this is their grandson, like so they're losing a grandson, And to hear them talk the way they talk and like to see how strong their belief was, it was building my faith slowly, not knowing at the time, but now that I can look back on things, it was slowly every day my faith was growing stronger and
Hmm.
stronger and stronger. And when we got to the fifth day, when Christian was ultimately passed, that was me and my wife were in the room with Christian, Brittany, and her husband at the time, and we were just talking. Christian had already herniated, so we were just kind of waiting to tell the nurses when it was time to turn the machines off. Everybody had come up and said their goodbyes already, so this was just us four kind of being with Christian for the last time. And during that conversation, Brittany had said something. She said that Christian's been in heaven because now we're hours in from him like herniating. And she said, Christian's been in heaven. This is just his body. And she didn't say that as some like serious stopping point of the conversation. She just said it within the conversation. And then we all started talking again, but like that stuck with me for some reason. And I was thinking about that as we were all just talking. And so we finally, I asked my wife, hey, can me and Brittany have time alone with Christian to say our last goodbyes? And so they left the room and were with Christian. The nurses were able to move Christian like over so Brittany could lay with him. So Brittany's laying next to him. I'm on Christian's side. I'm holding his hand and just how have my hand on his chest, and we're just saying our goodbyes. And then I asked Brittany. I asked her. I said, "What did you say like earlier about Christian?" And she said, like Christian's been in heaven. Like this is just his body, but his spirit is already there. And so, I don't know why it brought calm to me or why like it calmed me. And so, I asked her to tell me again, and she told me again. And every time she said it, it kind of just brought more calmness. And then I said it's time. So me and Brittany, we told each other that we weren't going to cry. Um, I told my wife, I said, hey, let the nurses know that it's time. So as the nurses are working around us and they're getting ready to turn the machines off, I just tell Brittany, just keep telling me that. So she kept saying it, Christian's in heaven, this was just his body. And she just kept saying it and saying it and saying it. And I just told her, like, keep telling me, keep telling me. And that's what got me through, you know, watching him as I held him as he took his last breath. And, that faith of knowing that Christian was in heaven, that Christian was in a better place, that he's where, we all want to be one day. That's what got me through this whole scenario. That's what got me through this whole like situation, is knowing that. And even to this day, that brings me a sense of peace knowing that he's in heaven, he's in paradise. And I mean, what else could a parent ask, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
so and from that day on, I kind of felt I felt at that moment that like Brittany's faith was so strong that it didn't only just cover her, it covered me at the time when, you know, my faith wasn't where it needed to be. But her faith, her parents' faith, Pastor Terry's faith was so strong that it basically blanketed me when I needed it. And I don't really know how to explain it to the point of how it felt. It's kind of the best way I can explain it. That it was just a feeling. It was just a conviction that poured over me at the time when your child's dying, your child dies in your arms. And if something like that, if I could survive that, then it had to be real.
Is
Like
is that
that's the worst it could get.
is that where you think God really became real in your life when experiencing that, knowing that Christian was home in heaven and he finally had peace because he was with Christ? Would you say that was when you kind of felt God was like the realest in your story?
Yeah, like it wasn't the words of a Christian is in heaven. It's a feeling that I just can't explain.
Hmm.
It's a feeling that I felt that came over me in my heart that I can't truly explain, but it brought calmness to me. Yeah, like it brought me to the faith. It really, God is real. Faith is real, and it took the worst minute of my life to finally realize that,
That
and
that's the
that's
Holy Spirit, man. That's I think that's was Jesus' way of telling you he's okay, that Christian's okay, and you know he's he's home.
yeah. I mean, the selfish part of me wishes Christian would have been awake for one of those 5 days, just so I could tell him
Yeah.
what was going. That I loved him, um, and how proud we were of him. But a part of me is grateful that he wasn't awake to experience what was happening. And so, those are the things that run through your mind, and the only thing I can do is just, like I said earlier, I thank I thank our Lord for the 14 years, and I don't blame him for just giving me 14 years. And that's something that I truly have to, it's one thing to say it, but it's something I truly feel. And so, that's what brings me a little bit of peace every day, and a little bit of, why I don't turn my back on God is that, he did give me that.
Yeah, and you were able to experience God, like that was love washing over you going through that experience, and just think about how many lives, Christian will continue to impact by you telling this story and by you professing your faith in Christ. And that's important, continuing his legacy, and also just hearing you give glory to God through all of this, because I think most people would turn their back on him and say this isn't fair. He was 14, and be mad and just kind of go on their own plan, but you're leaning into him and still giving him the glory. And that right there is the true definition of Christianity, man.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like I said, there's definitely times where I am angry, and,
You're human, man. You're human. You're supposed to
yeah,
be, you
I
know?
do sin. I'm not perfect, but in my heart, my faith is growing. I'm growing. I'm doing what I can to study the Bible, and like study the Word to truly understand that. Truly, it's one thing to say, "Hey, thank you for giving me 14 years," but I mean to truly understand what that truly means. That the Lord gave me a son, allowed me allowed him in my life for 14 years,
Yeah.
because some parents lose their children at birth, or lose them earlier. I got 14 years to have my son, and I mean, I don't know, like, I can't in my head say, I'd rather have not had that, and I wouldn't be in all this pain. Like, no, I just can't. Like, it was the best thing to ever happen to me. Like, he changed me for the better from the time that he was born.
Well, and you said something earlier too, even with your daughter and how you want to raise her in Christ, and Christian played a role in that, a huge role in that. So you're almost changing, and if I'm incorrect, correct me, but you're looking at fatherhood through a different lens now because of that experience in the hospital.
100%. You know, I've always felt that Mia has gotten the better version of me. I'm older, more mature. We're just in a different stage in life. I had Christian in my mid 20s, and it's a little bit different than when you're 35.
Yeah.
So Mia's always gotten the best version. But yes, because of Christian, because of what he did, and I say that Christian saved me twice. Um, the first time was earlier in 2025, and the second time was that night in the hospital when he truly brought me back to the Lord. Um, and so, he is like this story. I have had friends and people reach out and tell me that your story has helped me want to be a better father. I want to get back in the church, or I have been going to church now and stuff like that. I mean, because that's all you could ask for. Like as a person that lost a child, you just want your child's life to mean something, your legacy to continue forward. And for me, that's where I get the blessing of that is when people tell me that, because and we go through life like nothing's ever going to happen, and we take life for granted, and we take our families for granted, and we take fatherhood for granted. And it's not because we want to. It's not out of any like ill will, but life just gets in the way until all of a sudden your child's gone, and it makes you realize what's truly important in life. You know, this
Hmm.
career, the money, the external tangible things. Like in the long run, it means nothing. You know, I have like members who are rich, who are alcoholics, and struggle with that, and they have all the money in the world, and they're still not happy. And I have family members that don't have very much money and struggle in life, but they have beautiful families, and they're rich in love. And the older I get, I realize that money and the personal awards of your profession, at the end of the day, it means nothing if you're sacrificing your family for it. It means nothing. I think a lot of men are realizing that, like operators and special ops guys and people in law enforcement that did 20 something years, and they got divorced, and their kids don't like them because they weren't there. And now, they live this great life, but now they regret it. And I think that's the struggle for a lot of us, is that balance between career and that purpose, and being a father and being a good husband. And unfortunately, a lot of us pick careers over family, and I was one of them. And that's a big regret I have to this day, is that I was a good father to Christian. I could have been great. I could have been better. I knew I could have been better, but I chose my career over doing that. And now I don't get tomorrow. I don't get to make up for it. It's gone forever. And so, that's something that I'll never take for granted again, and I won't do with my daughter. So, that's the lessons learned from this whole situation. And so, yeah, there's just so much that you could unpack and learn from tragedy and faith and just lessons learned.
And you've created an organization, right, to kind of carry on his legacy.
Yeah, so we just started a foundation called Casting with Christian. Um, like I said, Christian got really big in fishing the last like couple months of his life, and we truly believe it changed his life. Just being out in nature, and for some reason he was really good. He was catching bass and catfish, like big cat and bass, and you could just tell the change. And so I'm not a big fisherman myself, and so we just saw like what it did for him. So we want to do that for kids, and we want to bring those opportunity to children who don't have it, and bring them out there to fish and get out in nature, and just experience, like get away from all the noise and get to experience what like nature brings, and like the beauty like of it. So there's that focus, but we also want to focus on families who are in the hospital, in the pediatric or ICU. Things that we don't always think about is, you know, your child goes into ICU, life doesn't stop, bills don't stop. You have other children. Like it's a very traumatic, a very difficult time. And the last thing you want to do is leave the hospital and go to work. And so, by the grace of God, we were able to sustain ourselves for those 5 days. But, we didn't believe Christian was going to pass away. We thought he was going to, we didn't know how he was going to be because of the brain injury. But the first 2 or 3 days in the hospital, we thought he was going to make it. So we were already gearing up for a long hospital stint. And me and his mom had already said, we're not leaving this hospital until Christian does. I don't know how that would have been feasible completely if that would have been the case, financially, um, for me and his mom. And so a lot of families are facing that. And luckily, there's families that can't even miss work for a day or two. And and so we want to help them in their darkest hours with bringing them some support while they're in the hospital as well. However that may be, whether it's things that they need, financial help, resources if they lose a child, but any way that we can help those parents, because that's something that's not talked about enough. And and so yeah, and so we experienced it, and like, we truly want to help those families, especially when we're in that group and we hear these stories, and a lot of us have gone through it. A lot of them were in that same boat in the hospital, and now they're in financial strain because of it. They're in financial strain all while grieving the loss of a child.
How can people that are watching tonight or listening, how can they help? Is there a website they can go to donate money, or is there something they can do to kind of help you guys with this whole organization?
Yeah, so we just got the foundation approved. So we got the EIN last week.
Okay.
We're still waiting on the 501c to get approved. So right now we're not accepting like donations, but we will be soon. We do have a website. It's almost built, and we're going to launch that as well.
Okay.
I don't have the information exactly, but the 1 year anniversary, so October 31st through November 4th, Christian passed on November 4th. Those 5 days, I'm going to do a fundraiser, and it's going to be the first fundraiser for the foundation. And we're going to team up. We're not 100% sure who we're going to team up with yet, but we're going to team up with the foundation, and we're going to raise money for families in need. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 5 half distant triathlons. So that's a 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike ride, and a 13.1 mile run for 5 days. The 5 days that Christian was in it was in the hospital. And every day I I want to bless a family with help, however that may be, financial help or whatever we can do for them. But that's going to be the first big fundraiser launch for the foundation. And so that's coming up. I'm still getting the whole logistics straightened out for that. But that will be the first thing that we do for the foundation. And
Are
so
you
we want.
Is
Uh,
that in Texas? Are you doing those races in Texas?
yeah, I'm gonna do that here. So they're not sanctioned races. I'm just gonna
Okay.
do those distances.
Oh,
And so
gotcha. Okay.
so I recently did a ride. It was called the Ride. Matt King, the CEO of GoBundance, he rode his bike from Mexico to Canada, and throughout that journey, they were raising $1 million. And throughout that journey, they were stopping in little towns along the way, and they were helping people out that need help. And I was able to be with them for 3 days. And something that really inspired me, that I really liked, that you don't really see often, is you're involved with fundraisers. People raise money, but they raise money for an organization. You don't never get to really see the end result of
Yeah.
where the foundation goes. So with this, we actually got to see where the money went. We got to meet the families in need. We got to talk to them and hear their stories and see their faces, see their tears, see their smiles. And so to me, and so then people got to see that as well. Hey, my my donation went to these families I can tangibly see. And so I really like that idea. And so that's what I want to do. I want to raise money, and I want to give it straight to the families that are in need. And of course, like they'll be screened and stuff to make sure. But there's plenty of families in the area here around the San Antonio, um, New Braunfels area that are in need, that are facing crisis, lost their children. We've had children lost the last like couple of weeks. Um, and so, it happens every day, and we just don't really hear about it. You know, we hear about the child that was found drowned, right? That big story that's going on. Well, he was with his friends. He was in college and he drowned. Well, we just had a child who was, I think, 13 years old here in Bernie. He just drowned trying to save his 9-year-old friend. They were out at the lake, and this was just right before the flood, so about 2 or 3 weeks ago. But that never made the story. That never made the headlines. And that family is facing the worst possible time in their lives. And so, it happens all the time that we just don't hear about it. And man, to go through a loss of a child is just, man, it's so damaging to everybody, not just the parents, but grandparents, friends, aunts, uncles. Everyone loses that child, and everyone's in grief. And so, we really want to do something to help them in Christian's name, in Christian's honor. That way, his story is always going to be told. His legacy will always live on, and and I'll dedicate my life to that.
That's incredible, and I'm just respect the fact that you're continuing to help others through this tragedy. That you're willing to go out and help those in need. Man, that really says a lot about you, and Christians continue to impact people in a positive way through that legacy, man, and that's incredible.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I think giving back is, yeah, I think that's healing like in itself.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Like it is, whether you lose a child or you're coming back from alcoholism or addiction or anything. I mean, just you know, giving your life to God and then giving back to others, man, that is so powerful. It heals you so much. And so, and I truly feel that in my heart. Like giving back is and giving back in Christian's name is really healing me. Uh doesn't heal me completely, but it definitely heals a small part. And so, you do that enough, I may be able to get back to what I used to be. But yeah,
Well, you're doing the Lord's work, man, and you're helping a lot of people. And I know this episode is gonna help a lot of people. If somebody's watching tonight, Derrick, or they're listening and they've experienced a similar situation, they've lost a child, is there something you'd like to share with them? Maybe if they're on the edge of giving up or they just feel like they don't have any hope because of this tragedy, do you have some words of advice that you want to share?
you're not alone. Like I said, man, there are children passing away every day. You're not alone in this journey. There's resources out there. You can reach out to me, Christian Strong underscore project on Instagram. You can reach out to me and I'll always like talk to you. But the power of having a group that you could talk to that shares that knows what you've been through and can share that grief with you, like we are out here. And so just you're not alone. Like you may feel like you're alone. You may not have the support around you. And that's a whole nother story of the people around you that either do or do not support you. But I'm here to tell you that there's people out there that care, that will help you. I'll always be there. And I'm sure there's something around where you live that you can be a part of. But just don't give up, find that community, reach out, be vulnerable, because we're all going through it. And so there's nothing that you can say that would ever push the ones that have been through this like away. Like my group, we cry, we we leave our emotions on the table and out in the open for everyone to see, and they're just there to pick it up and pick us up. And and then that's what a family is.
Hmm.
So you're not alone. Like there's people out there that care, that would love to help you and love to find you resources and just get you the help you need. But I promise you, you're not alone out there.
Is there a verse or something that has kind of kept you going through this whole process that you want to share?
Yeah, so one of the verses that's going to be, for casting with Christian is Psalms 55 on 22. Cast your burden on the Lord, and He shall sustain you. And so that's something that I kind of been like living by since I came back to my faith. Is just cast my burdens onto the Lord, and and like He'll help you. And so, as man, it's hard to give that power to somebody else because we always want to be in control. We always want to have the answers. And what I've learned is that the more I try to do that, the less in control I am. And so yeah, so I'm really learning to just give myself to the Lord, t- tell him my burdens, tell him what I need, and just let him guide me.
It's awesome, man. I've got one I want to share too. This is out of Revelations 21:4. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has been passed away. So, Christians at home, he's in heaven, and the rest of us will join him someday as long as we follow Jesus Christ, because he is the only way home to the Father in heaven. And so we have the ability to rejoice because we know this is not our home. We are God's creation, and being at home with him in heaven is where we belong.
Sure. I mean, that's what that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps my faith in check is that, I will be with him again one day. And so,
Amen.
yeah, only way through that is through the Lord and through his word. And so, even though we're sinners, we strive every day to live the best way we can. And so that's one thing that really keeps me going is that I will be with him one day again. So yeah, I love that.
I love your outlook, man. I really do. I think it's tremendous that you're able to just come on and share your story, and you're giving hope to others out there that are dealing with grief and loss, and especially something as unimaginable as losing a child. So you're doing great things, man, and I have a lot of respect for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And like I always say, tomorrow's not promised.
Hmm.
5 minutes from now is not promised. I went from trick or treating with my daughter, having a great time, to a phone call that's saying my son's being airlifted to the hospital.
Yeah,
Like my whole life changed in just 2 seconds. A simple phone call.
yeah,
So live every day. Like we say, live it like every day like it's your last. You don't have to do that, but just really truly live. And give your time and your focus to things that truly matter. And to me, that's your family. And I know we can't do that 100% every day, but I think if we try to focus more on that, then we can do a lot better than like what we're doing. And I think, if we can do that, God forbid no one goes through what I went through, but you don't want that guilt
yeah,
that like you could have been a better father, or you could have been there more, or you should have done this, because once it's gone, it's gone. You know, once tomorrow is tomorrow, it's never gonna be again.
yeah.
So,
Nothing's promised.
yeah.
I'm gonna close this out with a prayer, man. All right, here we go. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for bringing Derrick and I together, and thank you for filling him with your Holy Spirit to have the courage tonight to share his story and to share the legacy of his son Christian. Lord, I pray that those people that are watching this and listening, that it will inspire them to seek you. And if Derrick is able to still have gratitude and selflessness to help other people, that shows your love, Lord. And just him sharing that story in the hospital as he's laying there with his son, and you just touching him and letting him know that you love him is what it's all about. And I just pray that this will help others, that we've done a good job tonight by spreading your gospel, and also mental health. We've really touched on how important it is to seek help, whether it's in a group, through you, or people that you trust, so you can lean on them and you can't do it alone. Lord, thank you for this platform, and thank you for Brother Gabe for bringing us together tonight. And I'm just grateful. I pray you'll bless Derrick and his family. Also, Lord, be with his organization. I pray that it will help others and that it will grow and be fruitful, that it will honor you, and it will also help others that need it. Thank you again for all that you do in our lives, Lord. It's in your mighty name I pray. Amen. Thanks for checking out the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. Be sure to smash that bell at the bottom, subscribe to the channel. New episodes drop every week. You can check us out on Spotify, Amazon Music, and also on Apple Podcast. Derrick, I have so much respect for you. Thank you for coming on tonight and sharing just everything, man. I know it took courage. I know it's not easy to be on the other side of that screen and to share just things in life, especially losing a child, man. I still cannot imagine what that feels like, but I respect the fact that you are filled with gratitude, that you're helping others and you're putting others above yourself, and that you're still carrying on the legacy of your son, man. I really respect it.
But thank you for having me, and giving me the opportunity to share the story, share Christian's life with y'all, and remember, like, you're not alone out there. There's someone there that loves you. God loves you. So just seek it.
Amen. God bless you, man. I really appreciate your time tonight, bro.